Very good morning, girls. Till now, we have seen what are the different economic institutions as far as within our country is concerned. We have seen trade, international trade, foreign trade, FDIs, and FEMA. And apart from this, let us start our discussion. What are the international economic institutions that are concerned as far as our business and economic policies are concerned? So, what is the reason first why we have to means in the first initiation in the year means the history of international economic institutions commenced immediately after the Second World War, because after 1930s there was a great depression. There was a need for an organization to create a system for exchange rate stability, to monitor, to control. The World Bank and International Monetary Fund (IMF) were created only after the World War II. Need for reconstruction of countries of economies affected by World War II and for the development of underdeveloped nations, means developing nations, there arose a particular international institutions, economic institutions, under which let us start our discussion with IMF, International Monetary Fund. The International Monetary Fund, which is popularly known as IMF, the United States Treasury passed a proposal in the year 1943 for its establishment. The United Nations means USA proposal is known as White Plan, and UK's proposal is known as Keynes Plan, become the basis for the International Monetary and Financial Conference at Bretton Woods in 1944. This was attended by 44 nations on that particular conference. It came into being to promote economic and financial cooperation among the member countries with a view to facilitate the expansion and balanced growth of the world trade. The IMF was established to provide short-term assistance to correct the balance of payments disequilibrium. I think you are well aware of BOP and BOT as we have discussed in the earlier videos. This was created in 1945. The IMF is governed by and accountable to 189 countries. Popularly, IMF is shortly known as it's International Monetary Fund, but it is known as Fund. What are the functions of IMF? What is the need and necessity of these member countries to formulate such International Monetary Fund? The first and foremost important function of IMF is to determine the rate of exchange by every country. Means there will be rates of exchange for currency conversion. It should be decided. Fund lending, credit tranches. Let me tell you what is meant by credit tranches. Credit tranche refers to a system of releasing loan funds in phases that the IMF used to govern its lending activities with its member countries. When a member country or a nation applies for a loan to help with economic difficulties, the IMF, means International Monetary Fund, will disburse the loan in a series of credit tranches. In simple terms, girls will say tranches are pieces of pooled collection of securities, usually debt instruments that are split up by risk or other characteristics in order to be marketable to different investors. And it acts as a central bank's bank. Training and technical assistance will be given, and of course it also do consultancy role. What are the achievements of International Monetary Fund? International monetary cooperation will be achieved, exchange stability is observed, checking competitive depreciation is done, increased assistance is achieved, increase in capital resources as there will be transactions among the countries, expansion of trade. This is very easy because many member countries are doing business within themselves. Coming to the objectives of IMF, international monetary cooperation. The first one, second one, to facilitate expansion and balanced growth of international trade, to promote exchange stability, generating higher employment and income, abolition of exchange restriction, and it helps to members during emergency. I think this plays a very pivotal role as far as IMF is concerned. Now let us see what is the relationship of IMF to India. The relationship between IMF and India has grown strong over the years. In fact, the country has turned into a creditor to the IMF. India and IMF must continue to boost their relationship in this way, as it will prove to be advantageous for both IMF and the country called India. The International Monetary Fund predicted lower growth in India and economic contractions in the US, Japan, and Euro region next year, calling for further interest rate cuts and fiscal stimulus. India recorded a GDP growth of 9.8% in 2006 and 9.3% in 2007, and its estimate for 2009 is 6.3%, of course, which we have crossed well earlier. Now, the second topic we need to discuss is about World Bank. What is the meaning and what is the constitution and composition of World Bank? Let's see. The World Bank is an international financial institution that provides loans to developing countries for capital programs. Of course, the World Bank's official goal is to reduce poverty also. The World Bank is a lending institution that funds essential infrastructural requirements globally. The World Bank differs from the World Bank Group in that the World Bank comprises only two institutions, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development IBRD and International Development Association, which is in short IDA. Now let us see what are the functions of this particular World Bank. The bank group uses financial resources and extensive experience to help poor nations in reducing poverty, increasing economic growth, and improve the quality of life. World Bank provides technical and financial assistance to underdeveloped nations for development schemes like building roads, schools, hospitals, etc. because the main aim is to eliminate poverty from the world. Now, current global challenges include the financial crisis, high food prices, and climate change will also constitute the functions of this particular World Bank. Now, let us see what is the contribution of World Bank to India. The World Bank's work plan in India is split out in its country strategy. The country strategy for India from 2009 to 12 is aligned with the government's 11th five-year plan. It focuses on helping the country to fast-track the development of much-needed infrastructure, support the 7 poorest states, and respond to the financial crisis. The strategy envisages total proposed lending of US dollars of 14 billion for 2009-12 duration only. The strategy is implemented through lending, dialogue, analytical work, engagement with private sector, and capacity building exercises, etc. How it supports India? Let us see. India has been borrowing from the World Bank through IBRD and IDA, as we discussed earlier, for various development projects in the area of poverty elevation, infrastructure, rural developments, etc. The IDA funds are one of the most concessional external loans for Government of India and are used largely in social sector projects that contribute to the achievement of Millennium Development Goals. India has borrowed around $65.8 billion from the World Bank so far. Of course, this has been increased also till now. In the year 1958, the bank played an important role in establishing India Aid Club for providing specific economic assistances to our country. It has now been renamed as India Development Forum. The International Development Association, an associate of World Bank, is known as the soft loan window of the bank and was established in September 24, 1960. During 1995-96 to June to July, India ranked first among the nations getting assistance from IDA. And next, we are supposed to discuss about the institution Unctad. UNCTAD, which is governed by its 194 member states, is the United Nations body responsible for dealing with the development issues, particularly international trade, the main driver of this particular development. Its works can be summed up in 3 words: think, debate, and deliver. This was established in the year 1964 in Geneva. The main promotion and development of this is friendly integration for developing countries into the world economy, and it aims to help shape current policy debates and think on development with a particular focus on ensuring that domestic policies and international actions are mutually supportive in bringing about sustainable development, and it possesses 194 countries as its members. The widening trade gap between the developed and developing countries will be reduced. The dissatisfaction of developing countries with GATT then decided to start a new organization which will help to reduce the trade gap of the developing countries. The UNCTAD was established in 1964 as a permanent organ of the US General Assembly. The functions of UNCTAD include promotion of international trade with a view to accelerating economic development. Second one, to formulate principles and policies on international trade and related problems of economic development, to negotiate multinational trade agreements, and to make proposals for putting its principles and policies into effect. Of course, a review of the functioning of UNCTAD gives us the 8 functions have been held under UNCTAD, gave an important role of primary commodities and natural resources for developing countries. It also took efforts to stabilize and expand the export earning of these member countries. In the process, UNCTAD adopted a group of approach to negotiations with the OECD countries. And developing countries are coming together under the age group of 77 to coordinate their positions. China formed a separate group, of course. If you see the role of UNCTAD, despite the debates and disagreements, it played a very pivotal and key role. The generalized system of preferences, a maritime shipping code, a special international programs to help least developed countries and international aid targets. And of course, the mainstream and main discussion goes like during the breakdown period of Bretton Woods system, oil prices shocks, inflation and accumulation of debt by developing countries. So then in that particular situation, UNCTAD became a central forum for debates between